everyone, welcome to Belle's Books. I'm Carly and today I'm talking about the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction long list. So the announcement for the Women's Prize for non-fiction is going to be made next week, I think on Wednesday, and I have been watching everyone else's predictions videos because it's my favourite time of year. I love the Women's Prize for non-fiction more than the actual prize for fiction now, I think. I really enjoy reading non-fiction. And a lot of the time I will, with a non-fiction book, dip into it and not read the whole thing. So I want to talk about the books that I am hoping will be on the long list. I have basically gone through everyone else's prediction videos. I will link them all in the description box below. Picked the ones that sound interesting to me, and that's my list of ones that I am hoping is going to be on the list. Also, I've done a very minor bit of research, not a lot, where I have looked at other books that might be possible based on the criteria. So this is my very confusing list. I should have done categories, but I haven't. I've got my little notebook here, so I'm going to be looking down to see what notes I've made in my very messy I think this one. So basically I've watched 2 or 3 videos. Also Dodger is trying to get in because it's half an hour till, no, it's 10 minutes till his dinner time, so apologies if there's meows and scratching. Can I get through this before he kicks off? Let's see. So I've watched Ben's video, Ben from Ben Reads Good, Jen's video from Jen the Librarian. Oh, he's made it in. Hello, Dodger. And Camilla's video from Hasty Books. I will link all of those down below. And I've picked basically the ones that I think sound great. I've put a bunch of reserves on at the library and I have been getting some in already. So let me go through the ones. Let me try and do this in a category style. So memoir, let's start with memoir because I've got a few memoirs on my list. The first one that I've managed to get hold of recently is Mother Mary Comes to Me by Arundhati Roy. I've not read anything by Arundhati Roy. I've got God of Small Things, but I've never read it. The reason that this appealed to me is because she's talking about a difficult relationship with her mother. I am very much here for difficult relationships with mothers. And I think she's talking about her writing career and writing God of Small Things. So this one I think is definitely going to be on the list because she's such a big name, and from what I've heard it's just had brilliant reviews. So I think that this one definitely. The other reason I want to read that is because the other book on my list that I don't have because I've already read it and it was a library copy is Hannah Kent's memoir, Always Homesick, Always Home. I'll post a picture here. I read this in January and I adored it. It was incredible. The subtitle to this book is A Love Letter to Iceland. It's about her time in Iceland. So she went there as an exchange student when she was 17, I think. And it talks about that early kind of formative experience, the way that she fell in love with Iceland, and it talks about her writing experience of her first novel, Burial Rites, which is also one of my favourite books, and I loved that a lot. And because I knew Burial Rites and I loved that book, that really worked for me. And her writing is just beautiful, and I thought that memoir was just incredible. So I really hope that's on the list because I've already read it. Okay, another memoir that might be on the list is Death of an Ordinary Man by Sarah Perry. Again, this is one that I haven't got, but I want to get hold of. I really want to read this. It is about the death of Sarah Perry's father-in-law. Disclaimer, I went to uni with Sarah Perry. We weren't doing the same course, but we hung about together a little bit. I haven't seen her in a very long time. The last time I saw her was at the Cambridge Literary Festival, where I went up and got a book signed, I think, and I was like, hey, remember me? But her and her husband are just 2 of the loveliest people like on the planet. I love them so much. They're such a lovely couple. So this almost feels like a bit weird because I'm not friends with them, but it feels a bit like I'm prying to read this book because I know them only slightly. But yeah, I'm intrigued to read this because it is about how her father-in-law was diagnosed, I think, with cancer and then died really quickly afterwards. So it is about his death. And that's interesting to me because I went through something similar this past year. I had 2 bereavements, hence why I haven't been filming for the past year. 2 bereavements that were unexpected. And so when books address that kind of thing, I think that's really interesting, particularly if you've got personal experience. So I'm hoping that is on the list. Also, Sarah Perry's going to be at the Camlet Fest again in the spring, and I will hopefully go and see her. Okay, have I got any other memoirs on here? Oh yeah, so I've got 2 on my list that I'm not sure the Women's Prize are going to go there. I would be glad if they did. Also, not sure if they're eligible, but I don't know why. They were published in the time frame. So, 2 memoirs that talk about the current situation with the Epstein stuff that's going on and just general sexual assault. So the first one I've got, Nobody's Girl, a memoir of surviving abuse and fighting for justice by Virginia Guthrie, who it was published posthumously because she died or supposedly committed suicide. I don't know what the deal is with that, but it sounds very dodgy. So that is her memoir about being an abuse victim of Jeffrey Epstein and Prince Andrew. And the other one is Giselle Pellicot's memoir, Shame Has to Change Sides, A Hymn to Life, which I think isn't out yet, but it's coming out in March, I think. And my God, that woman. So I think that would be great if that was on the list, but yeah, I don't know whether the Women's Prize would do that. I don't know, maybe it's a bit too risky for them. I would be glad if it was on the list. No Dodger, not your dinner time just yet. Okay, right, so there's those 2. Right, what else? Oh, I've got 2 biographies of writers. So the first one that everyone else has predicted is Electric Spark, The Enigma of Muriel Spark, by Frances Wilson. It's a biography of Muriel Spark, who I don't know anything about. As soon as I heard that was out, I was very intrigued to read it. I've got a reserve on at the library. I haven't read any of Muriel Spark's works either, which is terrible because I have some, I just haven't read them. Now the other one that I really want to get hold of is Gertrude Stein, An Afterlife by Francesca Wade. This is a biography of Gertrude Stein. Francesca Wade wrote a book called Square Hunting, which I think was again biography of different women, I think in the Bloomsbury group. I have it, but I haven't read it. But this, I listened to the London Review of Books podcast where she was being interviewed about the book, and it just sounds like Gertrude Stein sounds wild. And this book sounds so incredible. I really want to get my hands on it. So I'd be super chuffed if that was on the list because it gives me another excuse to read it straight away. So those are the 2 biographies of writers that I think probably only one of those will be on the list. I kind of hope it's the Stein biography. Okay, right, let's go back. What else have I got? Oh, Ben was talking about this book which seemed a bit, he said it might be a bit left field, but actually I really like the sound of it. It's The Acid Queen, The Psychedelic Life of Rosemary Woodruff Leary by Susanna, I can't read my own writing, Callahan. Apologies, I will list all these books in the description. But so this is a biography of the wife of a professor who was doing research into psychedelic drugs. And I know nothing about that, but it sounds super interesting. Like, it sounds like their life went a bit crazy and it went off the rails because of what was happening. And it sounded like she sacrificed a lot of her own life for his studies. And I think that's something that the Women's Prize might be into because, you know, if we think back to the previous book, Wifedom, about George Orwell's wife and the amount that she did for him, I think that sounds like a little bit comparable. So I'd be very happy if that was on the list. Okay, and I also really enjoyed the sound of To Have or To Hold, Nature's Hidden Relationships by Sophie Pavel that Ben highlighted. So I got a copy of this because I was like, I am down for this book. It looks at symbiosis in nature, symbiotic relationships, and kind of rather than survival of the fittest, it looks at how different species work together. It looks at parasitism and all of that kind of stuff, and the way that the natural world links up for survival, and what that says to us about the world, and the way that we've configured the world to be in this very kind of, you know, individualist, neoliberal kind of self-promotion way of living. So I'm very much into this. I really hope this is on the list. A science book, a nature book, yes please. Okay, another book that I picked up recently, Dodger's nemesis has just gone past. Baby cat. Dodger has a fight with him every time he sees him. It's a good job he's inside. Sorry for that interlude. Now, this book I've just started reading, it's Art Cure, The Science of How the Arts Transform Our Health by Daisy Fancourt. Isn't this cover beautiful? So it's basically what it says on the tin. Daisy Fancourt is a scientist, and she's looking at the scientific evidence of how engaging with arts improves our health. I'm very much here for that because I work in the arts, and I've just read the kind of the prelude and have already been underlining and making some annotations. So this sounds amazing. I really like that it's a scientific approach. I hope the science isn't too heavy because, you know, I'm not great with science, but I really like the way that she's kind of prefaced it by saying, let's break it down and look at arts in terms of the ingredients, like you do with drugs. Like if you talk about paracetamol and what the active ingredient is in that and is how it works. Yes, Dodger, hang on. Then we can do that with the arts and how arts engagement improves our health. I'm just like, I'm so here for this. Yes, please. So I'll report back on this once I've read it, but I really hope that's on the list. Okay, those are all the books that I've got with me now. Like I say, I've got some reserves that are hopefully coming in. The other one that I really like the sound of was from Camilla's video, which is called Designing Hope, Visions to Shape Our Future by Sarah Housley, which sounds a bit like thinking about, not really utopias, but how we can dream about a better future. I'm very much here for books that tackle like how terrible the world is by looking at positive ways that we can deal with things. So the blurb on this talked about, you know, like, why did we stop dreaming? Like in the 50s, there was loads of like sci-fi and utopian books and films and imaginings and thinking about how things would be in the future. And this book, from the sounds of it, sounds like it does that a little bit, like looks at 4 different ways that we can imagine a better future based on, you know, like all the terribleness that's happening in the world. So I really love the sound of that. I think I'm going to get that anyway, even if it's not on the list. And another one that's similar to this, where is it called? The Good Society and How We Make It by Kate Pickett, which is again another book about what we need to make society better, which is invariably healthcare, education, looking after people that need looking after, you know, basically socialism. So those two, I think, probably like both of them won't be on the list, but if either one on the list, that would be great. Okay, what else? I have also got a reserve on The Genius Myth by Helen Lewis. I think Jen was talking about this book and that really appealed to me. It looks at the concept of genius and how we ascribe that term to people that are like very talented, or like I think it lists Stephen Hawking and high level achievers, and it kind of unpacks the term and goes into a deep dive on that, which I think is really interesting. So I'm intrigued to get to that one. That is on my reserve list at the library. Okay, what else have we got? Oh, one that isn't out yet but sounds exactly my jam is Finding Albion, Myth, Folklore and the Quest for Hidden Britain by, my writing is so bad, I want to say Zakia Sewell. This sounds incredible. It's about folklore and folk practices that are happening across the UK. I'm very much part of that. I'm a pagan, so I kind of take part in those practices myself. So she's looking at what practices are happening at the moment still, what's being revived, and any particular, I think, kind of troubling aspects to certain like mythologies or folklore or practices that, like, I think there was the slave trade was mentioned, something like that. So it looks at issues with those things as well as the great stuff about it. So that's on my list. I'm definitely going to be reading that at some point anyway. Okay, what else? I've also got a reserve on Hark How Women Listen by Alice Vincent. I think this might be quite heavy on the aspect of motherhood, because that's what was mentioned in the blurb about when you're a mother and the way that you become attuned to a baby's cry, that kind of thing. So that's interesting to me. I've got a reserve on it at the library. Was it last year or the year before, I read Matrescence, and that was very much about motherhood, and that's generally not a book that I would read because I don't have children, but that book just blew my mind. So I'm very open to reading books now that involve topics about motherhood. So that's on my list. Okay, what haven't I mentioned? There's a new book by Rebecca Solnit coming out in March, I think, so I think that's eligible. It's called The Beginning Comes After the End, and I love Rebecca Solnit. She is one of those voices that I just kind of turn to for hope again when the world is burning. So that's what this book is. It's kind of looking at, I guess, ways that we can go, yes, all these terrible things are happening, but we need to keep fighting the good fight, resistance. And if you've read Hope in the Dark, one of her other older books, which documents like all of these ways that different rebellions and uprisings and resistances changed the world, yes, that's what I need to hear right now. Okay, what else? Oh, The Crown's Silence, The Hidden History of Slavery and the British Monarchy by Brooke Newman. I can't remember who mentioned this, but do you know what? Did Roz mention this? I can't remember. I will find the video and put it below. But this sounds interesting to me. Again, don't know if the Women's Prize will go there. I see why not. It's topical. And last two on my list. I'm not sure if this is going to be on it, but I've seen it in the library when I've been at work. It's a book called Feminomics. I think that's how you say it. What Data Tells Us About Women's Lives and How to Get the Most Out of Yours by Corinne Lowe. Now, I haven't read this book. I only saw the blurb about looking at data and how, in terms of economic data that affects women's lives, that might be interesting to the Women's Prize. It reminded me of that book by Caroline Criado Perez, which the title I've immediately forgotten. I want to say Invisible Women, and that's a whole book about data that shows how women are disadvantaged in society through various different things like the built environment and law and all this stuff. So that aspect, I think, sounds interesting. The other part of the book where it sounds a bit self-helpy, I'm not sure of, because it's like, yeah, you can turn your life around and get what you deserve. I'm not quite sure how that works, if it's kind of leaning into this neoliberal vibe of like making money and all of that business. Maybe not, but I just saw it and thought it maybe looked interesting. The last one on my list, bit of a maverick pick, I don't know, I just saw it on the Waterstones website. It's called Hard Streets, Working Class Lives in Charlie Chaplin's London by Jacqueline Riding. I like books set in Victorian London, and books that look at working class histories are very interesting to me. I think that might be something that may be on the list if you're thinking about the ways that the Women's Prize highlights history books written by women that tackle like men's lives and working class lives. I think that's very interesting, so who knows, maybe that might be on there. It's a wild card. But I think I've got through all of my terrible pages in here. I can't read my own writing, honestly. If I've forgotten any, I'll put them in the description below. But those are my wish list predictions for the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction list being announced on Wednesday. We'll probably get none of them right. Maybe the Arundhati Roy, that might be the only one. Thank you for bearing with this terrible light. I was trying to film in front of my window to get the natural light, but the light is really dying and the light from the TV is now shining on my face. Thank you very much for watching. If you have heard of any of these books, have read any of these books, talk to me in the comments below. If there's any new ones that I've mentioned that you're intrigued by, please tell me. Also tell me your predictions. What do you think is going to be on the list? What are you hoping for? And lastly, I am also fundraising for a family in Gaza. I will drop the link to donate below. I would really appreciate some donations because it's very hard to consistently get people to donate, and this money is just going on food and essentials for them to survive in a genocide. So would really appreciate your support. Thank you very much. I will do another video soon, probably after the long list has been released, maybe a reaction video. Haven't even done my best books of the year, so who knows, but I'll be back at some point. Thank you very much for sticking around. See you soon. Lots of love. Bye everyone.